Hello, everyone. I am so happy to have you to my studio. My name is Kal Honey. I am an artist who lives and works in Brampton, and I had the pleasure of working with Akshata from Visual Arts Etobicoke when we both worked at Nielsen Park, and she's very kindly invited me to share my work with you. So you are coming, you are visiting me in my studio, which is in the third bedroom of our bungalow on a cul-de-sac in Brampton, and from the outside it looks very much like it's a nondescript. It's pleasant. It's a nice bungalow. We're on a nice little quiet treed street. But it looks nondescript from the outside. But inside, it looks like two artists are squatting. Both my wife Kim Lee Ko and I am artists, and so our entire house is, with the exception of the kitchen and the bathroom, is pretty much all given over to art. There's a couch here and there for us to sit at, but there's art stored everywhere. There's making space. And it's everywhere. So you can see and I've tidied up like crazy to get it to this level. But it's this used to be a design studio. So I was a graphic designer for many years. I graduated from OCA and in graphic design, had a 20-odd year graphic design career. Excuse me. And then I moved on to after 20 years, my wife and I took a year's sabbatical and traveled North America in a camper van, which was amazing. But when we came back, we said, okay, right, it's time to be the artist we always thought we were going to be when we were younger. So we folded up our graphic design business and started both instructing and making art. So I teach at Nielsen Park Creative Center, Visual Arts Mississauga, and various other community groups throughout the GTA and beyond, like up to Barrie and out to London and so on. And I also teach some of my own stuff since COVID online. So, but let me show you a bit of my work. So the first big thing that I made was called General Classification, and I was very interested in cycling when I was younger. I followed the Tour de France and all of that. I did a very little low-level competition, a little competing at a low level is what I mean by that. So I had lots of interest in that. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to make a piece of artwork about the Tour de France that had something about every single rider? You often know about who won or the dramas, but I thought, wouldn't it be neat to make a panel for every rider in the Tour de France? Now, so that's exactly what I did. So this is a 10-inch wood Baltic birch plywood panel with a little spacer to bring it off the wall a little bit. And the stripes in the background are team colors. This is the rider number. This is the scoring computer's short form for Team High Road, which was that particular team. This is the rider. He finished 8th, 6 minutes and 55 seconds behind the winner. So I made one of these I made 180 of these. And some like this, for instance, this was a rider who was disqualified for doping, so that's why it's got the big X across it. And this work took up a 30-foot wall at Station Gallery in Whitby in 2012. It took me about 3.5 years to make, and it took quite a lot of work, but I really enjoyed it because when I went to my studio, I knew what I was going to be doing. I was working on this team, or then I was on to that team, or whatever. So, I'd show up and I'd be making the flags. I made custom hand-cut stencils for all the numbers that I then used a stencil brush to stencil, and taped off the stripes to do those. So it was very formulaic and methodical, but it was really amazing to see it on the wall. And what I did was I proportionally arranged it from one end to another, the winner at one end And then if someone was like 10 seconds behind, they were this far, and if they were an hour, they were this far away across the wall, all the way to the person who finished very last. And then riders who didn't finish were strewn on the floor. So check out kalhoney.ca to see pictures of that installation. But these are my my cabinets are full of 180 of these. So that's what's using up a lot of that space. So I like to paint. That's obvious from that, right? And I like text and I like words. In that case, I was stenciling. My work basically divides into painting, collage, and graphics. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of each of those, starting with painting. Most of my work has words in it because I was always using words as a graphic designer, and particularly short, punchy things designed to get your attention. Right, a lot of advertising and marketing. That's what it's made to do. It's like grab your attention. So it's kind of fun to use that same approach, but for different things, rather than a commercial imperative. Right. So I, like a lot of artists, I have my demons that I have to deal with, and negative thoughts and doubts and everything, like so many artists. So I often make work with messages that I need to hear, right? And and they also seem to connect with lots of other people for the same reason. They also have negative thoughts, or they also have things that they're dealing with. So that's where this comes from. Trust in your process. We all need to trust in our process as artists, right? So, but in the background, if you're reading across, it's some of it you can't read, but some of it you can. It's a whole bunch of things that you can do to shake up or to help with your creative process. So, like, free associate, plan something random, consider, adjust, go with your gut, fire your intuition, pray for I can't even, guidance. It's hard to read. Start again, do something, do another thing, etc. So it's all these things that come to mind when you're trying to figure out what to do with something. As an artist, especially when you're younger, you don't trust your process. But the older you get, and I've learned to trust, like, just make stuff. And the more you make stuff, the more stuff will work out. Some doesn't work out, some does. And just have faith that, if you show up and you do the work, you're going to get something you like. Not always, but a certain percentage. And that's one of the real gifts of becoming a little more experienced at whatever you do, but as art in this case. So another reminder, right, that this is a word, this is just repeating the words work in progress, right? I'm work in progress. My painting is work in progress. Everything is work in progress. So just another reminder not to get too hung up about any particular aspect of it. I'm going to show you a few other paintings. This is called Cheap Therapy. And when I was teaching, I had a student say that I asked her, why do you paint? And she said, it's cheaper than therapy. And I thought, ooh, yeah, that's great. And so I thought I didn't know at the time, but that it was going to become a painting. So, and I like that it's just a little bit difficult to read. You can make it out, but it's a little bit difficult. And I love the shapes that letters come in, especially a well-designed font like this Helvetica Neue, or New. But also look at the top of this. It's covered in like silly string paint extrusions that were just a real ball to make. So that's done by using putting paint and heavy body gloss medium mixed up into a Ziploc bag, and then just cutting a tiny little corner and then basically using it like an icing bag. And so I knew I wanted it to rain down, but you can see it's not controllable, right? It does what it's going to do. I wanted it dense at the top and sort of raining down. But that was definitely some cheap and excellent therapy doing those, because it just go blah, 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 right? So it's lots of fun. Usually what's in my work is what's on my mind, often anyway. So, and with my work, because it has text in it, you can read it. So I was thinking about how much stuff we have. We have a lot of stuff. Now, we need to have a lot of stuff. We're artists, right? We need lots of art materials. We need things that one might find their way into sculptures, might get used in artwork. So we're never going to have a minimalist life. But I was thinking a lot of us also have that problem just from the rampant consumerism. And even if you're trying to fight it, it's there, right? So I was thinking less stuff, and what do I want more of? So all the sort of handwritten stuff over top of the huge less stuff is the things I want more of. More freedom, more ideas, more fulfillment, more community, more simplicity. More sustainable, more savoring, more nature, more love, more time. So, and I like the contrast between the very large texts, like typography, and then the sort of more hand-scrawled written messages over top of it. This actually uses a little bit of that same setup, but this is what's called a Semuc Writing, which is, it looks like writing, but it isn't. So it also uses the sort of extruded paint you can see there. This is a fluorescent orange that's been, you can see it's got real dimension to it. But it doesn't say anything. It looks like it should. It looks like handwriting. So it's like visual scat singing, like, and then the thing in the back is designed to look like it might be like a really bold, stylized Asian character of some kind, or some other language that we don't recognize. But in fact, it's just made up. It doesn't have any significance. Anything that it does look like is incidental and not intended. So this idea that, like, oh, I should be able to read that. What does it say? But you can't, right? So kind of like an jazz improvisation. All right, so I mentioned graphics. So 2013, my wife and I and one other artist, Nancy Cuttle, had a show in Milton called Offense Defense, about fences and about barriers. So they both did work about chain link and people relating with restrictions, and it was very timely because of the U.S.-Mexico border and the segregation wall in between Palestine and the Middle East, etc. And there are all kinds of these nasty walls. And I was thinking, walls designed to keep out, walls designed to keep in. There's always like this imposition, right? This oppression with a wall, and that signs often go with it. Signs telling you what not to do. Don't do this, don't do that, only there, and so on. So part of the work that I made for that was some handmade signs. So with sort of unexpected messages, right? So it looks like a sign, but then when you read it, it's like, oh, it's not saying what I expect it to. And that's a great kind of thing, because we ignore signs, or we know they're like telling us, oh, what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, blah, 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 and so we ignore it. And so I love this idea of like making a sign that people won't notice necessarily, and then when they do, it's like, oh wait, that says something it's not supposed to. So back then, so this is 2013, I thought, I'm an artist, I should paint, right? Even if I want to do a sign, and I like to paint things by hand. And so even though this is sort of graphic design-y, you'll see it's not quite perfect because it's hand painted. It's very carefully hand painted, but it's not perfect, right? You can see the unevenness, a little wonkiness in the letters, and so on. It's painted on a wood panel, and I used a sanding shaper to shape the rounded corners to approximate a sign. And so Kim, bless her, said, you know what you should do with these signs? These are great. You should make them as like you would have signs made. Like send it out to a sign maker and have like metal signs made. Just like that. And I said, but that's not right, is it? It's like I should paint them, shouldn't I? And of course, you know, it took me a while to realize, yes, she's right. That's the perfect expression of a sign, is to have a sign made. So fast forward a few years, and I had some signs made of the designs that I like. These are some of the first signs that I came up with, and this is still the most popular sign I've ever made. People love this sign. I sell these signs. They're $100 each. They're either on aluminum, or in this case it's dye bond, which is this laminate. It's very thin aluminum top and bottom with a plastic core. It just depends what the sign maker has in stock, but they are designed for outdoors, and I have them made. I drill holes in them and bolt them up. So these were the first 3 signs that I came up with. I know it's hard to believe, but in Canada there are some places where you're not allowed to play hockey on the street, and that's just so wrong. So I just thought, a lot of my signs, you'll notice, are green circles. Usually signs are like red circles, like with a slash through them, no parking, no doing this, no doing that. And I kind of like flipping the script and making it about what you can do and what is good, you know, kindness. Yes, play street hockey. This is probably the second most popular, and I like this one a lot. Freedom rigidly enforced. You can go wherever you want, any direction, right? And we are going to enforce that you can do that. I've taken those same ideas and extended them into a few other spheres. One is artistic freedom. I believe strongly that you should do what you need to do, and you should explore as you need to explore to make the work you need to make. That's something I try and support my students in doing. But a lot of educational institutions, a lot of granting bodies, and so on will be like, okay, well, tell us in extreme detail what you plan to do and how you plan to do it. And it's like, well, what if I don't know? What if I want this money or this opportunity or whatever to explore, to find out what I'm going to do? Well, no, they don't like that, because it's not a deliverable, right? That's riskier. Whereas if you tell them exactly what you're going to do, it's like, great, okay, we like that. That sounds good. Here's your opportunity. And that, to me, sounds like graphic design. Like, when I approached a client and they had something they wanted me to do, and I said, yes, I can do that, it's a very different relationship than exploratory, which is what I believe art should be. So I made these signs about hazards that are requirements. The fact that as an artist you need to have these things, and other people find these risky things to avoid. Artists need to court them, right? You need to have doubt. There's a great Francis Ford Coppola quote about doubt, and he says, I don't think there's any artist of any import that he can think of who hasn't doubted what they're doing. And it's true, you know, like you doubt work as you go along, and then you figure it out later. That's scary. It's scary not knowing whether it's going to work out. Scary that that who you're doing it, people might not approve of it. They might not like what you do. We all go through that as artists. But you need to be like, so what? I'm gonna feel the fear and do it anyway, right? So fear is a sign that you're doing something that is stretching, that is outside of your comfort zone, and that might be something really great, right? It might not be, but that's the risk you take. Mystery, it's essential, right? If a work communicates exactly everything about itself right away and there's no room for interpretation, then it's not interesting artwork. You need to be willing to fail. You need to be willing to, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. There are so many times you fail, and learning each time, and then you get to where you're going. But you have to have that sort of tenacity to get past the failures that happen along the way. This is probably the most popular of this sign. Quite a few artists have bought this one, and it's a reminder, right? You need to take risks. You don't make interesting work without taking risks. So that's my Artist Hazard Requirements series. There are more to this series, but I'm just going to show you a few of them. And I did them first for In Situ Multi-Arts Festival at the Small Arms Inspection Building in Mississauga. Just kind of signs that also nurture a creative environment, right? So they're signs that would be good in any kind of an arts education, arts facility of any kind, right? So imagination cultivated at all levels. These were great. I showed these at the Gladstone Hotel as part of Come Up to My Room, and they look great in there because that hotel is full of creative space and creative exhibitions and so on. Open minds required while on grounds. Creativity nurtured 24 hours. So it has that sort of like authoritarian, officious slant, but it's actually a positive thing, right? So I kind of love playing with that sort of dichotomy. So these are all these signs I've been showing you so far. I'm going to show you some bigger ones in a minute. Are all sort of 12 by 18, which is sort of the normal parking bylaw type signs size. And these are some that I've done most recently around COVID, and they were designed thinking about COVID and thinking about the challenges that COVID has presented. But a lot of them are also things I would just like to see more of in society in general, right? Like empathy, like altruism. This one I made with COVID in mind. I wasn't actually thinking Black Lives Matter. I was just thinking we need to stick together. We're going to be stronger together. We need to fight COVID together. We need to be, supportive of each other. But there's so many things in which our society is better when we support each other, right? And the whole Black Lives Matter thing is exactly that, right? Like, let's pull together instead of dividing ourselves, right? And this one I made right at the outset of COVID because I was thinking, we're sort of siloed in our houses, but getting some kind of a feeling of, yes, we're all in this together. We need to be strong together. We need to support each other. So I made that just a couple of weeks into COVID and put it up on my website. So the next signs I'm going to show you are, I have like so many of us, I have concern about global warming, right? I'm a little freaked out about that. COVID has kind of pushed so much to the back burner, but I'm really concerned about climate change, so my activism with signs has sort of slanted that way. So I've started making some signs around that. Started that last year. So this is the idea of an option lane. We can either keep going on our awful trajectory, or we can make a quick direction change to save the planet. And this one is it's related to the one I just showed you, but it's, sorry, I try and get the glare there, so it's not, this whole idea of, unless we change our route very quickly, right? And we're running out of time. Like there's only a very small amount of time to get our emergency detour before we're on the highway to hell. The 666, the devil, the number goes with the highway to hell. And yes, we're heading south unless we take immediate action, take the immediate emergency detour route via Renewables Road. So all of those signs that I've shown you are signs that I design on my computer and I send off to be made at Mr. Signs in Etobicoke, actually. But in I'm not sure whether 2017, 2018, Claudio Gerardo, a Mississauga artist, called me up and said, would you like to be part of Artworks? And I said, what's that? And unfortunately, I haven't done it again in the last couple of years, but it was an public art making. So 4 artists, we were making art at Celebration Square in Mississauga live while people could come and watch us make them. And we could use public infrastructure. So we went to because it was put on, it was an initiative put on by the Mississauga Public Works Department, and they wanted to draw attention to what the city was doing about environmental issues like water quality and their plan for global warming and so on. So we got to find like bits of fences. Some of the other artists were using pieces of water main and so on. And I said, there are going to be signs, aren't there? Oh, yes. So I was like digging through all this like scrap in the public works yard and digging out old signs. So I like working with restrictions. I find my creativity gets amplified when I can't do anything I want. I have to work within these certain narrow constrictions. A sign is a perfect example, right? It only has a few colors, very specific sizes. It needs to be legible and very quickly read. So there are a whole bunch of restrictions right there. But here are even some more, right? When you have a sign that already has a whole bunch of things existing, sorry, like this one, this is a bump. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the glare. There we go. This is the only part that I added. This is the sign, and there was nothing down here, so I just added the world because, as we know, with climate change, it's going to be a bumpy road ahead for our world. So just adding that changed the nature of the sign. So it's fun working with what's already there. It's challenging, but I love that challenge. So here's a turn lane sign that I have just added some words to, and so it's moving away from single use, turning onto reusable. This one's a little big. So it was a maximum sign, and you can see that I've added some. So how do I do these? I use vinyl. You can see the edge there. I've added some white reflective vinyl over top of whatever it was, maximum 40 or 50. And then I typeset these on my computer, but then I print out and then I cut these out of vinyl that I just buy at the art store by hand. So again, these are, if you get up really close, they're a little wonky because they're cut by hand. They're pretty darn good because I have a steady hand, but they're not perfect, which I kind of love. But anyway, so maximum, instead of like 2 degrees Celsius overall is sort of what they say is the maximum the planet can actually sustain without disaster, right? So instead of changing it from a speed limit to a temperature limit. This is a repurposing of a one-way sign. So I added the tick marks and the thermometer, and I put a piece of black over some of the one-way sign so that I could put in this global warning. So used to be the one-way sign, and it's now that. And so that I quite enjoy playing with what was there. Sometimes you'll see these signs that are just basically alternating red and white stripes. They sometimes put them where there's like a dangerous thing, like a pole or something, so you don't hit it. And I just flipped it on its side and changed it to an emission statement. So we need to move from where we are now quite aggressively to reduce our emissions in the next few years. So changing the meaning to a more to an ecological meaning. So one other thing that I'd like to show you, and then we'll wrap up. I also teach collage, and I love collage, and I'm just going to put in a little plug for this book, which I use for teaching, called The Collage Workbook by Randall Plowman. The thing I love about this book is in the back, it's got 50 different prompts for starting points for collage. So I love to have a starting point. When I was a graphic designer, I always had a brief. As an artist, I have to make my own briefs, and I find that probably the most difficult thing about being an artist is like, okay, what am I going to make it about? No one's giving me an assignment. But with this, I have just a little kernel of something to start with, right? So, last year I started doing a whole bunch of collages using his prompts as starting points. So I'm going to show you just a few of those. And I wanted it to be something I could do very compactly so that it didn't take up much space. I have a small studio. I also took it on the road with me when I went away last summer. So I did them all in a small book, 6 inches by 6 inches. So this prompt was to take one image and cut it in two and use each half in a different collage. So I found a picture of Will Smith, a really nice black and white photograph of him, and I put him in two different contexts. So in this case, I put him in with bits from the Ontario Driver's Handbook, and a couple of chunks of color, some really nice dynamic angles. I love collage because it allows me to play, and a painting takes quite a long time. You have to plan it, and it takes layers, and you have to wait for things to dry, and so, which is great. I love that about painting. And the signs that I do, while that doesn't take me too long to design a sign once I have an idea, coming up with the ideas actually takes me quite a while. So collage is really a nice counterpoint to all of that, because of course, I have spent a long time on collage too, but there's something about being able to pull these things from different places and combine them that I really enjoy. It's kind of like a bit like my design past. But there are the two different collages. So there's the other half of Will, but I put him on an angle so that his ear could be to the ground, and I've matched him up with some type, botanical, a little bit of music, since he's very music oriented, among other things. So another one of the prompts that I came across was song lyric or song name. So I thought of a song that I particularly like by the White Stripes called The Denial Twist. And I used the words The Denial Twist and printed them out in several different colors, black, white, and red. Those are the White Stripes palette. They limited all their album covers and all their collateral to black, white, and red because they're a very pared back band. So they use that palette. So I use that palette as well. The prompt that this one had was to add finger paint. So that's what this one has added to it. So it's a collage of just a very few pieces, a couple of different faces, but you can see I have added finger paint outside and I've added finger paint on top, and it's called masks. Sort of the idea of like masks can be read many different ways, right? Facial masks, makeup is a mask in one sense, so on. So, yeah. So that brings us around full circle to what I've been doing recently, which it's not even done yet. So what I'm going to show you next and last is this piece, which is a 24 by 24 collage based on the sign that I made not that long ago, this empathy sign. Try and get it not to glare there. There we go. And making it up with collage. So it has some of the same graphic pow, right? It's a simple graphic shapes, the border, the simplified figures, the green circle. But because I'm using collage, you'll notice the green has lots of slightly different greens, a bit of text in it here and there, and it adds more visual interest, right? So the signs are meant to have immediate impact and be very legible and very clear. And this still has that, but the background, that instead of being pure white, it's made up of all different collaged texts, different directions. And because the idea is about empathy, so are the article. I printed off a bunch of articles about empathy and collaged with those. I'm going to put in, the only thing I haven't done yet is put in some red hearts in each of their figures, and I might put some sort of strings connecting the two, little red strings. So it will still have that sort of impact from a distance, like a sign does, but it will also have added interest when you get close, because it's not flat color. It's a little more interesting than that, and it wraps around on the edges. So that's where I'm going now. One of the questions I was asked was, what was the most meaningful experience as an artist? And I've had a couple, so I'll close off with those. One with that, where are they? With this project, the tour tiles, or general classification, where I did 180 of these, one for every rider, in the 2008 Tour de France, and showed at Station Gallery in Whitby. They had a program where they bring in classes for activities related to what was on at the gallery. And so I kind of thought, this is kind of shallow, and we always second guess our own work, right? So I thought, it's kind of an enthusiast piece about sport, and maybe it's not that interesting. But the gallery staff said they had really fascinating conversations about the doping and the cheating, and like how with the kids about cheating and ethics, and that they said whenever the kids got a glimpse of the wall of these things, they ran in to see what it was about and look at it. And I love that. And I love that it worked at different levels for them. And I wanted it to work at different levels, like visually beautiful, stunning, really in your face, because it's like huge, complex, and work at different levels, right from sort of just that visual, beautiful, powerful impact, right down to like deeper, thornier issues like cheating and doping and ethics in sport. And I thought that was really great. So that and seeing the work really large, that was huge, like literally huge. I did it. I worked on it in these tiny little increments. There's nowhere in our house where I could display it or see it. So I had a sense that it would be great big, but when I saw it big, when I finally got it installed, and I did the install, it took me 3 or 4 days to install it. It was very affirming and life-changing. It's like, wow, okay, so size does matter. Like, seeing something big is different than seeing it small. So that's one. And another one was the signs that I do. So I've shown these signs in galleries, and I sell them. You know, I like the fact that they are reasonably inexpensive, like $100, and that I can have more made. So they're not exclusive in that respect. It's like you want one of these, you can buy it, right? There's a nice democracy to it. But I've always been a bit leery about putting them. I always thought they should really be out in the world, right? They should be out on posts and where people can encounter them. And so come up to my room at the Gladstone Hotel, I got invited to show the signs. So I had signs on every floor of the hotel, in the elevator, and so on. It was really great. People who came to the event really loved them. Once they started clicking that they could find all these signs everywhere, they said, "Oh yeah, it was like a treasure hunt." I'd find, "Oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one." But another thing that I did, which was great, was I decided I'm going to put up a few out on the street, just outside the hotel, on Queen Street and on Gladstone Avenue. So, and I thought, oh man, I just hope I don't get caught. So I put on my orange jacket. I put on one of those high-vis, like reflective vests, my work pants, my work boots, and a cap and a toolbox, and I took my ladder, and I got up on the ladder and started installing them on telephone poles. And I thought, oh, I just hope the police don't come by. And no one paid me any notice. It was great. You know, the only people, like one guy said, "Oh, how do you like this ladder? I think these are good, aren't they?" And so we had a nice chat about how cool the ladder was. But everyone else just walked on by, right? They're just in their own world. And when I saw them up, and then I took photographs of them up on the street, that's where they belong. So that's where I want to take my signs, do a lot more of that, sort of public installations. I usually face them into the sidewalk, not out into traffic, so that they're not confusing drivers. I don't want any accidents on my head. I don't want people like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know what that sign said, and I bashed into," like, no, I don't want any of that. But you know, in sort of places where people can encounter them, you know, they may walk by it a million times, and then the millionth and 1th time they walk by, they like, right? So, yeah, so that's also been a really, really meaningful thing. And I love putting out good stuff into the world, you know, stuff that makes people think, stuff that makes people smile, stuff that makes people laugh, that puts positivity out, right? So, okay, well, I've rambled and gabbled, and so I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for coming to my studio. Thank you so much, Akshata and Arts Etobicoke, for having me as one of your studio visits. It's been lovely sharing my work with you, and yeah, thanks so much. Okay, take care, guys.